Hey everyone, it's Danielle Taylor with Keller Williams Realty here on the beautiful Outer Banks. And today I thought I would answer a question that people, actually sellers, ask me all the time. And that is, when is the best time to sell? You know, beach homes are different. And for most people that are buying in the Outer Banks, it's going to be an investment property or a second home. And so really those decisions are driven by either lifestyle and emotion or investment, return on investment opportunities, and or personal seasonal use. And so that can factor into it. And that's kind of traditionally how we've answered that question. However, I wanted to look at the data. If you've been following me, you know I'm data driven. I thought, let's look at the data and see what it tells us about the best time to sell. So the first thing I looked at was on the demand side of the equation, if we think about the law of supply and demand. And I looked at how the under contracts by quarter shake out. And so what I found was Q2, so calendar Q2 has the highest number of units going under contract. That's about 29%. Interestingly enough, Q1, January through March, has 28%, so almost the same. So really no differentiation. Then we go down to 25% of the volume in Q3, and then down to 18% in Q4. So going under contract prior to the end of June definitely allows buyers to take advantage of the peak summer season, either for rental or for use. So that kind of makes sense that we're seeing the most volume there. In contrast, if you choose to buy in the fall in that October to December timeframe, you know, people's attention is kind of moved elsewhere. The holidays, thinking about carrying costs for that property over the winter. And so we makes sense kind of that we would tend to see less contracts then. What I will note is that in my experience, buyers looking in that fourth quarter, October through December, are highly motivated and highly qualified. But let's take this one step further and let's look at inventory, because the amount of inventory coming on can increase competition, which could be a downside for sellers. So I looked at the inventory levels, so the competition side. Depending on your property, who you're up against may or may not make a difference. If you are top-notch, newer construction, impeccably maintained, pristine, showing well, you may outshine everybody no matter what. If you're not that property, your competition may be a very key question and part of your strategic positioning. So we know from the last set that the demand is highest. We do the most contracts in Q1 and Q2. What about listings that hit the market? So I looked at the listings that hit, and if we look at Q1, 28% of last year's listings hit in Q1, 27% in Q2, 24% in Q3, and 21% in Q4. Okay, so if we lay this over the previously discussed demand levels, what we're seeing is that Q2 has a slight advantage because we have more under contracts and less inventory coming on. So the demand may outpace the supply just slightly. The other thing worth noting, though, is that in the fourth quarter, we've got 21% of the listings coming on, but only 18% of the sales. So that may create more competition in Q4. So that may be part of the decision-making for people on their property. The other thing worth noting is if I look down to a monthly level, March, April, and May were the highest months for new listings. So if you were trying to strategically time it, my takeaway would be get on the market before March, get ahead of that rush, but take advantage of the fact that we know that there's demand. The days on market. So how fast is something selling? So homes that show well and are priced correctly are always going to sell fast. I can't say that enough. However, when you're selling fast as well, you also tend to be in a stronger negotiating position. Okay, so let's just remember that. In terms of days on market, the homes that closed in Q1 had the longest days on market at 47. Q2 was 38, Q3 was 41, and Q4 was 39. So very interesting data there. Not a huge discrepancy. So I would say if you were making your decision based on days on market, there wouldn't be anything statistically significant there, but just something to think about. So ultimately, from analyzing this, here's my key takeaways. List before March to beat the inventory and capture the strong demand. The right time is when it's right for you and your goals. So remember that and really work with your professional. The one thing I know is that if you aren't on the market, you won't sell. Pretty simple. So the data clearly shows we have a year-round market. So if selling is important to you, get on the market. Just remember always, if you want to drill down, you want to talk about your specific property, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. And ultimately, just remember, there's no better living than sandbar living.
There's no better living than sandbar living.